Il Fondo di solidarietà del Trentino è lo strumento che le parti sociali, insieme alla provincia autonoma di Trento, hanno scelto.
The Trentino Solidarity Fund is an instrument promoted by the autonomous province of Trento in close synergy with both employer and trade union. Such entities decided to start a fund in order to offer a social safety net and income stabilizer for all workers working in small, medium and micro enterprises. This instrument is an aid to all workers who are suspended from work due to layoffs or due to a reduction in demand of products or services offered on the market. Until 2015, such instrument was not at disposal of micro, small and medium enterprises, but just to large enterprises who could use standard tools such as layoffs and banking hours. Until that time, just construction enterprises and large production such as industry and manufacture could benefit from such measure, but it is at a national level since 2015 that micro small enterprises can benefit from such measures. The measure put in place with this instrument of the Trentino Social Fund are active when enterprises face a significant decline in demand and when the required labor force is consequently affected. Workers are usually temporarily suspended, and layoffs are measured not available for the micro and small-medium enterprises. The Trentino Solidarity Fund is a structured instrument that can fully face economic crises, both systemic and enterprise-related ones. Trentino acted ahead of this reform of 2015 and already in 2009 acted regionally with some measures. In 2009, trade unions, labor unions, acted directly on discussion table, round table with the national government in order to establish a reform, a labor reform, where active and passive labor policies were demanded regionally and where income support were delegated and decided at a regional level. We can well say that Trentino region was recognized with further powers in deciding how to act in order to prevent and to sustain micro, small and medium enterprises. This is particularly significant for the Trentino territory because about 90% of the whole economic tissue is formed by micro, small and medium enterprises. The difference between the Trentino Solidarity Fund and the national measure is that Trentino decided to expand its power and to expand its measure even to micro enterprises, whereas at the national level this was not possible, expanding the sustainable and sustaining measures also to those enterprises hiring just one person. Hence, micro-enterprises, they can suspend their workers and the Solidarity Fund will pay their incomes. But how and where do the Solidarity Fund find its resources? About 1/3 of the total sum is formed by contribution by the single workers, and the remaining 2/3 of the total sum are funded by the enterprises themselves. The percentage is about 0.45% of the total monthly or annual income of the workers, so just one little part is deducted from income and it goes directly into the fund. The additional decision by the trade and labor unions, particularly that of labor unions, was that of investing further not just to sustain income of the layoff workers, but also to boost and to proceed in the continuous education of the workers. It is well known that a skilled and educated worker will have better opportunity on the market, hence also for the enterprises and for the workers themselves. This is one of the main point which were highlighted by the labor unions, because particularly in microenterprises, the educational pattern was stopped at the beginning of the hiring of workers. It is particularly significant having a fund dedicated wholly to education besides layoffs and income sustain measures. Microenterprises, they tend not to invest and have high investment rate into education because most of them are constituted by 3, 4 or 5 workers, and having one worker dedicated to education even for short periods implies a decline in working production.
Il turismo è una fetta molto importante del territorio trentino.
Such measure has been also used in order to implement the so-called income stabilizer for seasonal workers, such as workers in the touristic sector. As we all know, for Trentino, the touristic sector is fundamental and a lot of people are working in this sector. Hence, it has been thought that expanding this solidarity fund also to these segments or set of workers is fundamental in order to guarantee them the possibility to have a stable income in the non-working periods. The Trentino Solidarity Fund has been also used and thought to be a useful instrument for the so-called age management of workers, and in particular it has been used in order to facilitate the retiring periods of older workers in order to favor a faster turnover of workers. The instrument I'm talking about has turned out to be fundamental in this very period. The COVID pandemic made this instrument fundamental for the stability and the prosecution of economic activities in Trentino. In particular, as an example, we can cite that touristic activities such as hotellerie and hotels management had to stop due to the pandemic at the end of February, beginning of March, and this has prevented such activities to follow in the following months, such as April and May. But also other activities, economic activities, have been affected, particularly in the tertiary sector, and we can recall the example of bar, pubs, restaurants, and small shops. And thanks to the Trentino Solidarity Fund, such activity made it possible to keep their workers and employees in the enterprise, and they could guarantee them also a source of income. Of course, the income is not paid by the enterprises, but from the fund itself. And the positive side of this is that the mutuality factor made it possible to have this funding, these resources, and prevented major layoffs of people. At the moment, giving some figures about this instrument, we can say that about 8,000 enterprises are participating in the Trentino Solidarity Fund. That implies that about 55,000 workers can benefit from this measure. That means that more than 1/3 of the totality of workers and employees in the private sector can benefit from this measure. In this very moment, the Trentino Solidarity Fund is used as an income stabilizer, though the instrument is the result of a collective bargaining by labor unions, representative of the enterprises and workers. At the moment, the fund is managed also by the National Social Security Institution, called INPS, which is the national institution who offers and pays out pensions, pays unemployment wages, and so on. This is how the Trentino Solidarity Fund is nowadays working, but once again, I wish to underline that this fund was meant also to sustain and to aid the continuous education of workers, and labor union will stress that once again and will implement that part once the crisis and this difficult moment will be over. In addition to this, not only to continuous workers, but the education that will be promoted will also benefit those classes of so-called discontinuous or temporary workers who in certain periods of the year are not employed but need to strengthen their working figure, working position by expanding their knowledge and education.